Hi, Sam here with JBugs.com. In our last video, we had finished running the main harness in a 1966 Beetle, and with the majority of that harness hooked up, we'll get to work in the front of the car. The Beetle we're working on had some previous accident damage that we'll have to work around in this video, and that starts in the trunk, where we loosen the fuel tank hold-down brackets, disconnect the sending unit cable, and remove the fuel tank. With the fuel tank out of the way, we can feed the horn wire up the steering shaft through the slot in the end near the steering coupler. Once the wire is fed all the way in, the wire is installed onto the terminal connection at the steering coupler bolt. Next, a new grommet is installed into the firewall, and the horn and master cylinder leg of the front left harness is fed through the grommet in the trunk, into the passenger compartment. From the passenger compartment, the wires are pushed through the newly installed firewall grommet and exit next to the steering column tube. The loose brown wire from the front harness is connected to the terminal end on the steering column tube. At the fuse box, we hook up the double black-red and black-yellow wires from the front left harness to the lower right terminal on the fuse box. The car we're working on has a bit of an issue because of the accident damage, in that the steering shaft is rubbing on the steering column tube. We use some spacers in between the upper column mount to lower the column slightly, and a piece of rubber hose between the grommet and the underside of the dash to prevent the shaft from rubbing the tube. Note that loosening the upper mount allows the column to be slid in or out of the body to adjust the gap between the steering wheel and the turn signal switch. While we're inside the car, we'll install the horn ring, beginning by installing 3 plastic spacers into the horn contact ring. Then the ring and spacers are pressed into the horn ring. Plastic washers are slid over the horn ring screws before they are placed into the horn ring, and followed by 3 horn button springs. The horn ring assembly is placed onto the steering wheel, and the screws are tightened down to the center ring, but not so tight that the horn can no longer be pressed down. The horn wire end is attached to the horn ring under the metal plate, which is secured with a small screw. And finally, the horn button itself is snapped into the ring. Back inside the trunk, the master cylinder harness is routed down to the master cylinder and hooked up to the brake light switch. Either wire can be attached to either terminal. The horn wires are routed along the lower body channel underneath the gas tank through the body, and the tab in the body is bent over to hold the wires in place. In the front of the left fender well, new horn wire boots are slid over the wires, and the wires are plugged into the horn. Either wire can be attached to either terminal. The fuel tank can be set back in place at this point, but don't completely install the tank until after all the wiring has been tested. Still inside the trunk, new speedometer bulbs and sockets are installed to the fuel gauge and the speedometer, and the blue indicator wires from the main harness are plugged into the lower, outer 2 bulbs on the speedometer. Looking at the back of the speedometer, the blue and green wire plugs into the left bulb, and the blue wire plugs into the right. Then wires from the front left harness are plugged into the fuse box at all of the following lower side terminals. The white wire is plugged into the second terminal from the right. The yellow wire is plugged into the 4th terminal from the right. And the gray wire is plugged into the 3rd terminal from the left, above the rear parking light wire. The single black-red wire from the front left harness is connected to the black-red wire from the main wiring harness with a shrouded wiring connector. The black-white wire from the main harness and the black-white wire connector from the turn signal switch is plugged into a shrouded T connector. Another T connector is used to connect the black-green wire from the main harness along with the black-green wire from the turn signal switch. The black-white wire for the left front turn signal is a loose wire and has a pigtail at one end. The pigtail will be left loose for now. The first wiring connector at the pigtail end is connected to this T connector as well. Another T connector is used to connect the black-green wire from the main harness along with the black-green wire from the turn signal switch. Next, the loose black-green wire for the right front turn signal, similar to the left with a pigtail at one end, is connected to this T connector. Again, the pigtail is left loose. Next, we'll hook up the front turn signals, running the black-white wire to the left and the black-green wire to the right side, turn signal holes in the trunk. The turn signal assemblies have to be removed from the fender, along with the seals. It is very difficult to feed the terminal end of the wire through the turn signal seal, so the end of the wire is cut off, the wire is stripped, and the wire is fed through the seals. Then the wire tube from the seals is pulled into place into the trunk. New terminal ends are crimped on. The wires are plugged into the turn signal assemblies, and the assemblies and seals are reinstalled. The front light harness is set in place, and all the wires are plugged into the fuse box at all the following lower side terminals. The white wire is plugged into the third terminal from the right. The yellow wire is plugged into the fourth terminal from the left, and the gray wire is plugged into the second terminal from the left above the rear parking light wire. Now the headlight assemblies are removed, and with the battery and a jumper wire connected to the positive terminal and the center lugs in the parking light sockets, we tap the metal headlight rings to the negative battery terminal to make sure that the parking light sockets ground out to the ring. The parking lights come on, so we won't have to run an additional ground wire to the parking light sockets. If your light did not turn on, you'd have to run a separate ground wire from the headlight harness, brown wire, to the additional terminal at the bottom of the socket. Back at the front fenders, the headlight wires are run through the rubber wire tubes and into the headlight buckets. The white, yellow, and brown wires are plugged into the headlight sockets as shown, with the white wire in the left position, the yellow wire in the top, and the brown wire in the right position. Then the gray wires are attached to the center lug of the parking light socket. The headlight sockets are plugged into the back of the headlights, and the headlight assemblies are reinstalled. Inside the trunk, near the headlight wire tubes, the ground wires, which have ring terminals, are screwed into the body. The original holes in this car were filled in, so self-tapping screws are used to attach the ground wires to the body. And with that, all the front components in this car are wired, so this portion of our wiring video is complete. In our next video, we'll install the dome light harness and get to work at the dash, connecting all the switches, relays, and wiring there. Thanks for watching. Say hello or let us know if you have any questions in the comments below. And if you're looking for wiring components or any other vintage VW part or accessory, head over to JBugs.com.